Hi, I'm John Stevenson, and we're going to be looking at the Song of Songs as an allegory. Now, I've already gone on record saying that I think the primary interpretation is the natural or physical interpretation that sees it as a collection of love songs, love poetry between a man and a woman. But I also said that I think this is a appropriate application. Let's dig in. A song is an allegory. First of all, it begins with their harsh treatment in bondage. Think about Yahweh and Israel, where their story begins. Now, in one sense, the story begins all the way back in the garden, but there was no Israel yet. And so, when the nation is actually born, not just when the nation is promised, the nation is born. That's in the day of the of Israel's bondage in Egypt. And so here we read, "My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me caretaker of the vineyards, but I have not taken care of my own vineyard." And that can be used to be reminiscent of the bondage of the Israelites within Egypt. Next, God sustains his bride in the wilderness with food. Remember the manna from heaven, the stuff that you look at and you say, what is that stuff? The whatchamacallit? That's what the word manna means. Sustain me with raisin cakes, refresh me with apples, because I am lovesick. Solomon chapter 2 and verse 5. Next, God is pictured in the wilderness as a column of smoke. This is pretty easy to see. We have Song of Solomon 3, verse 6, where Solomon shows up. What is this coming up from the wilderness? Like columns of smoke? You couldn't ask for something better on that. Perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all scented powders of the merchant, as the king shows up. And in the Exodus event, the king shows up and he leads them through the wilderness. Next, we see that God travels on his quote unquote traveling couch with the tribes of Israel around him. That's the term that Song of Songs uses, the traveling couch of Solomon. Well, there's a sense in which God also led his people through the wilderness, and yet riding in a traveling couch. Not that God needs anything to take him around, but that was representative of his throne, the Ark of the Covenant, as they traveled and led the Israelites and the tribe of Israel through the wilderness. Here it is, Song of Songs, chapter 3 and verse 7. "Behold, it is the traveling couch of Solomon, 60 mighty men around it, of the mighty men of Israel." You continue to read a little further on. King Solomon has made for himself a sedan chair, that is the traveling couch, from the timber of Lebanon. Now, the Ark of the Covenant wasn't made in Lebanon, so it does break down if you try to press it too closely. But it continues. "He made its posts of silver, its back of gold, its seat of purple fabric, with its interior lovingly fitted out by the daughters of Jerusalem." And so, likewise, the Ark of the Covenant was very carefully crafted for the sake of the Lord. Next, God is pictured with his bride. He pictures his bride as a garden with Eden-like qualities. Now, think about the land. But let's look at Song of Songs first. Song of Songs, chapter 4 and verse 12. "A garden locked is my sister, my bride, a rock garden locked, a spring sealed up. Your shoots are an orchard of pomegranates with choice fruit, henna with nard plants, nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all the trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, along with the finest spices." Think about how the land of Israel was pictured as a garden, as a land flowing with milk and honey. Here's another one, a Song of Songs, chapter 4, verse 15. "You're a garden spring, a well of fresh water, streams flowing from Lebanon." Lebanon is just north of Israel, so some of those streams flowed down into Israel as well. In the Song of Songs, the bride awakens to find that her husband has gone, and she goes looking for him and is confronted by especially the second telling of the second looking. Uh, she sees guardsmen both times, but in the second time they're sort of gruff and mean, and they strike her and wound her. A little bit like the prophets. In fact, you could sort of liken that to both sections of the prophets. The former prophets, they gave warnings, but they didn't, they were a bit more gentle. The later prophets got quite gruff and mean, and you've got a couple of captivities thrown in there, some rough treatment to Israel as she wandered from the words of the Lord. Here it is. "I opened to my beloved," Song of Solomon 5, verses 6 and 7. "I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had turned away and had gone. My heart went out to him as he spoke. I searched for him, but I did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer me. The watchman who made the rounds of the city, that's a picture supposedly attributed to the prophets here. Um, the watchman who made the rounds of the city found me. They struck me and wounded me. The guardsmen of the walls took away my shawl from me. Think about how the prophets speak, and the entire land eventually is taken away. Next, we want to look at allusions to the Song of Songs in the New Testament. Now, let me just say for the record, there are no direct quotes of the Song of Songs in the New Testament. But one author in particular, I think, has a number of allusions that I'm going to suggest you're supposed to see, maybe not the first one, second one, but after a few of them, you're supposed to maybe start looking at Jesus as lover. Let's look at some of these. And I'm speaking of the writings attributed to John. Now, most of those are going to be in the Gospel of John, but they won't all be. So let's take a look. First of all, we have Song of Solomon, verses chapter 1, verse 12. While the king was at his table, my perfume gave forth its fragrance. Here in John chapter 12, verse 3, Mary then took a pound of very costly perfume of pure nard and anointed the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Just that could be just happenstance, but we're going to see quite a few more. Next, Song of Solomon 4:15. You are a garden spring, a well of fresh water, and streams flowing from Lebanon. Jesus gets up and he says, "He who believes in me," and notice the streams flowing. "He who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being will flow rivers of living water." Fresh water, living water. Okay. Next, we have Song chapter 7, verse 9, and your mouth, uh, like the best wine, it goes down smoothly for my beloved, flowing gently through the lips of those who fall asleep. Remember in the story of the wedding, and remember the Song of Solomon, there is a wedding. I didn't even mention that. But the fellow who's in charge of the wedding, in charge of serving and so on, he comes up and he speaks to the groom, and he says, "Every man serves the good wine first, and then when the people have drunk freely, he serves the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." Notice the good wine, the best wine. In Hebrew, you say it the same way. Chapter 2 and verse 14 of the song. Let me see your form. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your form is lovely. Jesus says this in John chapter 5, verse 37, and the Father who sent me, he has testified of me. You have neither heard his voice at any time, nor seen his form. Notice your form, seeing it, hearing it. That's getting pretty close. Song of Songs, chapter 3, verse 3, and I said, have you seen him whom my soul loves? And that just reminds me of the story of Mary Magdalene in the garden tomb, and she sees one who she takes to be the gardener, and she says, "See, sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you've laid him." And so, where you've laid him, it doesn't use the word "see," but still that idea, and I'll take him away. And then finally, this one isn't in the Gospel of John, but this is in the book of Revelation, also authored by John. I was asleep, but my heart was awake. Song of Songs, chapter 5, verse 2. I was asleep, but my heart was awake. A voice, my beloved, was knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my perfect one. And that sounds so much like the voice of Jesus, excuse the pun. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and will dine with him, and he with me. So a number of those things. And what I'm going to suggest is that when you look at all of these, it's presenting Jesus as the lover of my soul, the one who came to earth and gave himself, died in our place for his bride, so that he might take us unto himself, and that one day will consummate the marriage with us when he returns.